Ladies and gentlemen, it now brings us on to our next session. I think this is a really interesting area to see how this fits into, well, actually all the themes that we've been talking about. When we look to the future, what are the ideas that actually will take us forward? So we're actually going to concentrate on clean technologies and how stakeholders are embracing them right the way throughout the value chain. So right from the beginning, right the way to the end, to the final customer. And then we're going to look at how those clean technologies and embracing clean technologies is actually helping to accelerate the transition in the regions that we're going to focus on as well. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation with hopefully a lot of practical examples and some good ideas as well. So please welcome your moderator to take you through this from the European Commission, Wolfgang Munch. Wolfgang.
Thank you, Sasha. Good afternoon, everybody. Clean tech. So why is clean tech important? Why is it important for just transition? And why is it important for the objectives of the Just Transition Fund? Well, as you know, transition is affecting areas in different ways, and some areas are more affected than others. So what we tried to do with the JTF was to focus on these areas which are most affected by the transition and to give another boost here. And clean tech plays an absolutely important role because it offers new pathways for the territories, for the industrial ecosystems which are located there. And we are talking here about, and if you now place it in Commission initiatives like the Competitiveness Compass, the Clean Industrial Deal, and others, it is basically still at the heart of these strategies, because we also need to look at ways how we can increase the size of the pie, meaning how can we do this transition in a way that we increase welfare, that we increase sustainability, that we increase the well-being of the people living in these areas. So we are talking here about industrial transition. So what do we need? And this is at the heart of the JTF, is that all this needs to go with hand in hand with social fairness, supporting workers, creating employment, because we also want that people stay in the area and not move away with the new skills they acquired, and help communities to adapt to the change. So this is what we do. It combines to deliver industrial transition with economic and social inclusion. So what is the role of clean technologies at EU level? They can create new value chains and high quality jobs in transition regions. We have several of these initiatives. The Strategic Technology for Europe platform, for example, is specifically dedicated to these clean technologies and other strategic technologies, and trying to, over different funding instruments, trying to center the funding and the support on these. And JTF is one of the funding instruments supporting this platform. We also have the Clean Industrial Deal. The Clean Industrial Deal is about energy-intensive industries. And one of the objectives is to keep energy-intensive industries competitive in Europe, while at the same time making this industry climate neutral, resilient, and just. And here, the ideas of decarbonization go beyond the planet, it also goes towards resilience, towards less dependencies, which in the current debate are quite important if you just open the newspapers and look at what is reported there, how the geoeconomic situation is evolving. We have a lot of inspiring examples from JTF regions. We have ports transforming into clean tech hubs. We have industrial areas leading in renewable fuels. And SMEs developing breakthrough carbon capture solutions with JTF support. These stories show how clean technologies can power a fair and inclusive transition that strengthens local economies and keeps people at the center. You see this, if you look around, you see some of the examples. We saw in the morning the JTF champions. So there are a lot of examples here, and in this session you will hear even more about it. And with these words, I would like to invite Ruben Maximal from the OECD to give us a keynote speech. Ruben, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Is this on? Yeah? Okay, great. So, very nice to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel and to be part of this event and workshop, conference, sorry. And, okay, so I have slides, I think. So I'm Ruben Maximiano, as I mentioned. I'm at the OECD. I'm responsible for teams that look at how do you adapt the regulatory environment in order to adapt the clean technologies that are appearing, in particular as regards energy, which is what I'll be talking about today. I'll be talking about a diagnostic tool that we've developed for DG Regio, which sets out the role for regions in adapting their regulatory frameworks. So, and maybe I should start by saying a couple of things. One is that our data and our work shows clearly that those countries and regions where there's more renewable energies, prices are lower than in regions where countries where that's not the case. And also that data shows that very clearly. So, because I understand that the regulation is not necessarily the most exciting, or might not seem like the most exciting of topics, I'm going to try and prove that wrong. And I'm going to start by telling you a little story that kind of visualizes what we're trying to achieve here with the diagnostic tool. So I'm from a small hometown, my hometown is in a small coastal town in Portugal. And I'm old enough to remember that in the 1970s, when they introduced the first traffic lights, there was a lot of awe. There was, what is this? What is this for? How does this work? And how bothersome is it that now we have to stop because there's a light, right? So that was my first, in a sense, encounter with regulation. So that's the closest thing. I didn't know what regulation was, but I was already sort of understanding that my future was going to lie somewhere in regulation. Anyway, because regulation, like traffic lights, is there to organize flows, right? If designed well, it keeps things safe and it keeps things moving. But if it's outdated, badly placed, it causes congestion, frustration, and delays. So sometimes the traffic lights need to be retimed. You need to change the timing on it. Sometimes they need to be moved. Sometimes they need to be replaced with a roundabout. The point is not whether we have rules or not, it's whether those rules are smart enough and well adapted enough to current circumstances to let the flows happen. at the speed that we want. And the rules that we're talking about here relate to a set of new technologies, solar and wind, which is still relatively new, and that are quite significantly different from the technologies that existed before. They are many smaller generation plants. They are bidirectional in flow as opposed to unidirectional, and they need to be placed in certain areas where there's wind and where there's sun. And because a lot of those rules are at subnational level, that is why DG Regio tasked us to do this diagnostic tool to shine a light on those bottlenecks and to help regions and localities adapt their regulations and rules in order to make that transition and that deployment happen faster. So I want to share with you that tool in my 10 allotted minutes. So the diagnostic tool is a screening mechanism of regulations. It looks at many different markets or sectors or technologies. It looks at solar energy and wind energy and pumped hydro storage, which is a storage mechanism, also now called water batteries. But we look at that in a level of granularity that's much larger, so that it's very practical in nature. So we look at agri-solar, we look at utility-scale solar, and we look at the issues that relate to national level legislation, but also to regional and local level legislation. So it's and then we join that with a set of questions at the end of each market that we've analyzed, a set of questions that can be asked and answered by yourselves by looking at the current rules. And that gives you a score. There's a scoring mechanism that gives you a score for you to understand, okay, in my region, I'm doing particularly well in a number of different areas, but as regards spatial planning for utility scale solar, I'm actually having a number of bottlenecks or barriers, and that could be on spatial planning, it might be on permitting, and then it goes to a level of granularity there that allows you to screen and understand what needs to be prioritized. So it's kind of a sense, it's an evidence-based or quantification-based approach in a structured way that allows you to pinpoint where action is more, should be prioritized first. So let me give you an and let me just mention here, I mean, because I should have made this point perhaps at the beginning, but what we see from our work at the OECD in the context of this diagnostic tool is that, you know, European Union has done many different directives and regulations. Many of them need to be implemented at national level, but many need to be implemented also at regional and subnational level. And most of the decisions about infrastructure are being taken at that level, at the level of the regions, at the level of municipalities and the town halls that approve land use plans, and the local offices that issue permits. So you can have all the targets that you might wish at national, at European level that set the direction, they're critical, but to a significant extent, the local and regional authorities then hold the pen as to the implementation and to actually delivering on those targets. And the diagnostic tool, we looked at many different aspects that have that sub-national aspect. So permitting, zoning, and approvals. And we did 2 case studies for 2 regions, one in Portugal and another one in Italy. 2 very different, so 2 regions with a lot of potential, still far away from their current capacity, still very far away from their potential, but at the same time, one in a decentralized country and another in a very centralized country, which is Portugal. And what we saw there, I think, gives us a flavor for what we've seen in many other regions as well, which is a lot of potential, but a lot of overlapping competencies between regional municipalities and heritage authorities that delay projects in the case of Italy, and in the Algarve, regional plans in Portugal, in the Algarve, regional plans that date back to 2007. So many very old, completely silent on renewables, and then municipalities that had only recently updated their municipal plans, but had no provision or no identification of areas that might be suitable for renewables. And so these examples show that, you know, the decisive battles of the energy transition are not only fought at national legislative level, but very much at that level of land use maps and rules, local procedures, and municipal offices. And what this diagnostic tool does is allows us to capture the realities systematically, rather than treating them as anecdotal frustrations, let's say. I'm going to give one example. In 10 minutes, it's difficult to give more, but there's many, many examples. But I want to focus on spatial planning. So basically, the idea here is if the map is wrong, the journey is going to be slow, or you're not going to get to where you want to get to. So that's the sort of the underlying message. So when you have outdated and inconsistent spatial plans, this is actually one of the biggest common reasons for uncertainty, a delay in resource intensity. Because then developers face the uncertainty of understanding where they can actually place, where they should be investing to understand where to put their solar plants, for instance, so that they identify the most efficient areas for production, and that fits in plans that were designed to accommodate them. Because if you don't have that, what does that mean for regions? It means essentially that, as one person that was interviewed in one of the case studies said, we have to invent the wheel every time. If there's nothing in the spatial plan, and if we get a request from a developer, we need to look at it from A to Z. We need to spend a lot of resources to understand whether that's possible to be, whether it should be there, whether it shouldn't be there. And that ends up using up a lot of resources, creates a lot of uncertainty for developers, and also leads to eventually a lot of legal challenges as well. And so ultimately, it's very resource intensive for both parties. On this one side, the developers, on the other, the regions. And so our tool basically identifies the common regulatory barriers for spatial plans, looks at the types of rules that in some of our best practices that we've identified, what kinds of things that they have, so that the questions then reflect, okay, how do we get from where we are now to where we could be getting to in the future? And that is actually one of the ways in which to overcome the resource issue at the permitting level of the regions. So what our tool does then, what it can help you do as regions, is a number of different things. So if you think again about my analogy of the traffic light, and you think of traffic control system, this is the diagnostic tool is like a traffic control system for regulation. And it can be used in very practical ways. The first way is by building awareness and capacity through actually explaining to the regions the methodology of the tool and how they can actually use the self-diagnostic tool, and also the types of best practices that we've identified and how they work. I was surprised to understand that often some of the regions that we spoke to actually felt they didn't know about the best practices. So they weren't aware of the types of things they could be doing. And they were very thirsty to try and understand, what are others doing? How can we do that? So these sorts of things can help. Another is to make a regional assessment, and authorities can do that themselves with the tool, or they can help, of course, get the help of the OECD to try and produce a clear map of their own regulatory barriers for change and using our examples. And of course, there's also in-depth reviews that can be done to actually make recommendations for specific change that can be done. So in a sense, this is a very practical tool. It sets out in a structured way, all the common barriers, the common solutions and the best practices, a list of questions that set out so that you can understand where the priorities should be, but also that in itself shows the direction of the changes that might be needed. And that, in a nutshell, is the tool. I'm, of course, very happy to say that tomorrow it actually gets published. So we will certainly share with that website when it comes out tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to putting the diagnostic tool to work. I do think that this is an important aspect that regions need to consider if they want to benefit from the transition. It's an economic opportunity and not just a cost. And in order to do so, the regulatory frameworks are really quite critical, more than perhaps most of the time we'd think, because we need traffic lights that are showing green and allowing flows to go from one place to the next, investment flows, in this case, to renewables. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Take place. Thanks also for reminding us that money is not everything. Money is helpful, but if you can't spend it or take a lot of time to spend it, then you don't get the transition done. So this is an helpful tool, and it also fits very well in this debate about investments and reforms, which are in the center of the next MFF. So, can I use the opportunity now to invite the panelists to the stage? Albert von Papst from SDS Separation, the Netherlands. Take. Lisa Grasser, Makerware, France. Katarzyna Faruga, Hydrogen Technology Cluster, Germany. Robert Dominko from the Center for Demonstration and Training in Carbon-Free Technology, Slovenia. And last but not least, Rumjana Grozeva from the Regional Economic Development Agency of Stara Zagora, Bulgaria. Sure. So, we heard about the importance of regulation, the importance of getting the administrative capacities right and regulated right. Now, Albert, you are from, well, basically an SME perspective, and you're looking at groundbreaking technologies. The floor is, can you say something to your person and then to your subject?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you, Wolfgang.
Take a mic.
Does this work? Yeah. I'm Albert van Papst. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SDS Separation Technology. And we build carbon capture installations. And I would like to tell you why very briefly. Because you have carbon capture, several kinds of carbon capture. We do point source carbon capture at the source. And by 2030, which I tried to show on this slide here, in Europe, about 2,200 emission stacks will, and each emission stack will be emitting less than 100 kilotons CO2 per year. These 2,200 emission stacks, they will be responsible for 55 million tons of annual CO2 emissions. And these are mid-sized industries. These are ceramic plants, all these critical industries, paper, packaging, chemical, processing, food, mostly burning fuel, fossil fuel for heat. And the question is, why are these industries still emitting CO2 and so much? And one of the reasons is that because their processes use they have process emissions, so CO2 is part of their production process, like in ceramics. Another reason is that electrification is not so easy. We all want to electrify, but sometimes there are heat requirements, or there's grid congestion. So why are these companies not investing in technologies to catch this carbon? So I hope you can see this picture. I took the most ugly, biggest scrubbing tower that I could find on Google Images, but it was not difficult to find because this is how a typical traditional scrubbing tower looks. And these conventional scrubbing CO2 capture installations are designed for mega structures, for huge plants, not for mid-sized industries. They're very costly, they use a lot of energy, And this is, that is the reason why these companies are not investing in that. And they, in the end, also burden mid-sized companies with stranded assets, which they have to keep for up to 30 years, not flexible. I think you probably get where we're getting. This is where SDS and the Just Transition Fund come in, because we, with the support of the Just Transition Fund, developed a compact solution, which is standardized and skid-based, and allows these companies, these mid-sized industries, these thousands of industries, to capture their carbon with a positive business case, earning back their investment in a relatively short time. And before I give the microphone back to Wolfgang, I just want to finish with one important thing which I like to say. Why does this matter? So this matters because of two reasons. So in the EU, we want to reach the 2030 target for emission, right? The 55% target, which Wolfgang also referred to several of these targets. We will likely not reach this target of 55% reduction to 1990 if we don't do something about these thousands of mid-size industry emissions. So that's one. But secondly, and this also reaches very much at the heart of the JTF, GTP, we put millions of workers in the EU, millions of jobs at risk, because these industries, they employ about 8 to 10 million highly skilled workers. And these industries already are fighting trade tariffs. They're already fighting low-cost manufacturing in Asia. And what they need is cost-competitive, a cost-competitive way to comply with emission reduction and a way to stay in Europe.
Thank you, Albert. So you heard that we need technological innovation, strong innovation to be able to make this transition happen. Lisa, on to you. How does battery recycling, I don't know, Albert, whether any of your materials use rare earth or any of these things? No? Zero. Okay, but nevertheless, Lisa, the case is yours. What does battery recycling do?
Well, you should note that there is no rare earth in batteries either. But yes, so MakeAware does battery recycling, and our goal is to make clean European battery recycling a reality. At the moment, what we see is that battery recycling already exists around the world, mainly in Asia, but conventional routes are very environmentally damaging because they are coming from mining, well, they're linked with mining activities. So we cannot, at the European industry, cannot simply replicate what's happening in Asia and just copy-paste it in Europe. So that's why we need innovation. That's what we're doing at MakeAware. This is a key topic today because more than 80% of battery waste are currently being exported outside of the EU. And that is growing because the amount of waste is still growing with the development of that industry. So we need to keep the waste in Europe and to recycle the metals in Europe to do a closed loop around those strategic metals. And that's also where the Just Transition Fund comes in for us. We are, not working on the slide, sorry, I missed that. So here you have on the slide a picture of what the battery value chain is. And that's where we come in. So in blue, that's what we're developing. We're not only developing a technology that does recycling in a cleaner way compared to our international competitors, we're also working on the recycling ecosystem as a whole. And this with two objectives. The first is to organize the recycling activity. Battery in general, the battery industry in Europe is quite recent. Battery recycling is even more recent, so it needs organization to be efficient, and we want to be part of that organization. And the second is to also secure the feedstock, so the battery waste that comes into our recycling process, of enough good quality. Because as our CTO like to say, garbage in means garbage out. So if we don't have good quality waste, so meaning homogeneous in a regular flow, we won't have quality metals to give back to the battery industry. So in a nutshell, the JTF is not only help us to scale up our technology, because we're SME, but we're also a startup, meaning we are currently deploying our technology to scale, but we're also working with regional actors on the integration of that technology in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So we heard here how innovative technology really can create a circular value chain. And this also contributes, of course, to the resilience of Europe and its independence. Fantastic. Now, all this transition needs to be powered somehow, and hydrogen is the top of the talk. So, Katarzyna, what are you doing?
My name is Katarzyna Faruke, and I'm representing Hydrogen Innovation Cluster from Chemnitz in Saxony, and I'm responsible for the extension of the network towards Central and Eastern Europe. So, of course, the hydrogen is a core topic for us. As the organization, as the umbrella organization, we've got several topics as a competence center, Saxonian competence center in the region. But we are also a National Hydrogen Innovation Center in Germany, and our specialization is fuel cells. So in the National Hydrogen Innovation Research Center at that moment, we are building a proving ground, a place where industry could validate and could implement the solution related to hydrogen. And at the moment in the cluster, we've got 160 members. We've got companies from Germany, but we've got also company from France, from Austria, from Australia, from States, and hopefully soon we will have also a Polish member. And we've got also a colleague from Czech. We are building bridges around Europe, worldwide, and we've got also a project related to education, what the clean technology means, how to use it, and how to gain the acceptance for the new technology. And of course, very important for us is building bridges with the neighboring countries like Czech and Poland. At that moment, we are also preparing the Interreg project with our Czech colleagues, and hopefully we'll have more European projects also on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Katarzyna. So we heard about the value of cooperation, the value of networking, and innovation comes with networking, comes with competition, of course, but networking is so important, and bringing partners together which bring complementary skills and assets. So coming to the skills, Robert, we have, with all these new technologies, I mean, you need people being able to create them, to operate them, to do all these kind of services, whatever is. What are you doing in this direction?
Yeah. My name is Robert Dominko, and I'm from National Institute of Chemistry in Ljubljana. And I'm also university professor at the University of Ljubljana. But here, actually, we are coming more closer to, we heard CO2 capturing, we heard recycling of batteries, hydrogen economy, and the center of development for development and demonstration and training for carbon-free technologies actually is somehow academic, still academic institution, but which bridges all these SMEs that or clusters and actually helping them to bring this technology closer to the industrialization, closer to the real use and the real application. On the other hand, yes, our aim is also to bring some of our ideas closer to the industry and not only to really help industry to de-risk their actually intention to get there. So basically our vision is, yes, to create conditions for this technology. So going from the carbon actually region, heavy carbon region to the decarbonized region, and mainly decarbonized region to make a seats to deploy these technologies closer to the industrialization. And yeah, we don't want to work really regionally because region is very small. We need to go more, and we actually aim to go even out from Slovenia because such centers combining battery knowledge, CO2 capturing knowledge, hydrogen knowledge, those are missing in Europe. So it's, and thanks to JTF, here's a great opportunity for the Saudi region to bring that. So we are right now around 90% of done. Project is almost accomplished. It will be finished next year, but it's already snapshots from this center that is developed. And this center actually will be not only polygon for the industry and academia, but as it was said also, we plan to, education is also one big part, and we know where knowledge is, then this is then great start also for industry to really prosper and to build. So we have two independent labs. One is on batteries and one is on hydrogen and CO2 economy. And yes, I think most of this was already said. So just another snapshot of nice equipment that we have already installed, and it's ready to use. So already projects are we have already contracts for the project with companies. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. So universities, skills, test beds for SMEs, all important. Romania. We heard about from Ruben, we heard about the complexity of the regulation. We heard from Albert and from Lisa how innovative technologies can help. Then we heard about the value of cooperation, and then, of course, the value of demonstration and training. And you, in your function, bring everything together. How are you doing this?
Thank you very much. My name is Rumiana, not easy. Sounds as Romania, but Rumiana. Thank you. Rumiana Grozeva. I'm coming from the biggest region in transition on the Balkans, Stara Zagora. We also have a joke that this is the center of the universe. It's a joke. But how we are doing that? Actually, last week we celebrated our 30 years as agency, and the slogan of the conference was 30 years connecting the dots. That's what we're doing in the region, and not only. We have partners from 15 regions and from Europe, regions in transition. And actually, what I heard from all the colleagues here on the stage is exactly what the agency is doing to connect the dots between the different stakeholders and different industries, and to bring them together to find solutions, to preparing, applying some policies. And today I'll represent also one of the flagship projects in the region and led by the agency. The projects focus on the development the capacity of the European Digital Innovation Hub Zagore. Actually, what we're doing in the hub is everything that my partners here need. I mean, we're providing some services for training, because new technologies needs time, needs new skills, and each of these needs need also some more efforts. It's not so easy just to have some well-skilled people from the mining industry or from any other chemistry industry and to bring them in some new technologies and to say, okay, you're well qualified, please start working. They need training, and we're providing such training. The small companies, startup need some test before invest environment, also providing such kind of opportunities, even for mid-caps and small and in the region of Stara Zagora, large companies to test their ideas also for CCS, and also providing with consultancy how to find investment and how to access an innovation network. Actually, the hub is a part of 200 other hubs all around Europe, and Digital Hub of Saxony is a partner of us also. On the picture, you could see our new generation hydrogen testing facility, equipment providing services for training and for testing some hydrogen-based technologies. And what is most important to say in this sense is that we have this physical facility, but also thanks to the Digital Hub, we provided training in virtual reality, which means that people who are not located in the region of Stara Zagora, but all around Europe and the world, could taste this equipment to make their training and to be more, let's say, funny somehow, because all of us know that to learn new things are not always funny. But in order to be more funny and more attractive, we prepared as a kind of game. I'll not demonstrate now, but when Clara told me that the presentation will be spread, we could follow the link and to see how it works. Because this equipment is located in not so big hall, it's not possible more than 10 people to go, to train, to test. This is why we decided to have this new virtual training area. And thanks to Ruben for providing me this so easy traffic light example, because actually we need really green light for local authorities, for industry, and for all involved in the just transition. I'd like to say thank you for DG Regio for providing us this opportunity and the great collaboration we have till the moment. And my appeal in the end is just to continue to work with the just transition mechanism, because so many efforts on the ground to convince local authorities, to convince industry, to convince workers that they have a future in these regions shall continue next at least 7 years. This transition needs more and more time, and believe me, I am coming from East European country, which in transition lasts 35 years. 7 years are not enough to convince, to prepare, to implement, and to continue to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really, I mean, it shows that transition, organizing the transition is a very complex issue. And it demonstrated again to me that one size fits all does not exist, because you really told that, I mean, you need to adapt to the local situation, to what is there, and then find the right way to progress. So I think in this we basically connected all the dots, and we are fantastically in time, even advance, if I see. So if you have questions to the panelists, now is the time. There's a mic coming.
Hi, thank you for your presentation, Ruben. I would like to know if the tool, and I know the toolkit, at least the manual is coming, or the guidelines is being published very soon. Is it easy for a region, a municipality to look at the tool, to apply it locally, to identify its regulatory bottlenecks for the deployment of renewables, and is it easy to escalate it to other regions? For example, I had the opportunity to look at the scanning you've done for the Algarve, which is a region I also know relatively well, at least I understand the regulatory environment at national, regional, and local level. It's a fantastic scanning already of all the regulatory issues, the regulatory environment that exists at the different levels and the bottlenecks at the different levels. And my question is, would, for example, now any region in Portugal look at what you've done in the Algarve and use the methodology to come to the same results and the granularity? Because what I found fascinating about the use of the methodology at regional level, it really gives you, identifies very well what are the bottlenecks at permitting, spatial level, access to the grid, and what depends from what it depends on the municipal local level to change, what is the regional, in Portugal there is no such thing, but what is the central level responsibility in changing, for example, access to the grid. And would it be easy for any region to look at what you've done, the general methodology and the specific, and how you use it in the pilots, and transpose it, or would they need to hire OECD to do that for them?
Thank you, Sophia. Is this working? Yes. Thank you, Sophia, for that and for looking at the tool with such attention. The quick answer to that is yes, it is a self-diagnostic tool, so it's meant to be easy enough to use by the regions by themselves. I'm not saying it's something that you can do in half an hour. It was something, the questions will probably need that you go and review the laws, review the regulations you have at the local level or regional level, and then answer the questions as they are. But they should be standalone. In fact, the case studies, so we call them preliminary recommendations for the Algarve and preliminary recommendations for Apulia, because we were not making a deep dive scanning. The idea was to have an understanding, okay, what kind of language should we be using that the regions understand? What kind of specific issues are the regions facing? And so we actually changed the tool and adapted the tool so that it was more user-friendly from that perspective, from the regions and the localities. So I would say yes, it should be usable. Of course, these are not necessarily super easy topics to deal with. So again, it will depend on the resources that are available for that, but it should be easy enough to use by all regions. I wanted to mention as well that, so when we looked at the Algarve and Italy, we did need to look at national, regional, and local levels, right? Because these things end up interacting quite a lot. So part of the tool was about the coordination that exists between those things. But also we thought, even if you're a local authority, and if you want to deploy energy, renewable energy, some of the bottlenecks are going to be at your level, but others are going to be at a level that's not yours. But this tool should also equip that local authority to say, look, we've also undertaken a national level analysis like the OECD in the case study, and we believe there's a number of things, regulator, number of things, legislator, ministry, that you need to do to help us so that we can also do certain things. So I think that's one thing. I think the power of the tool also is the fact that because it's quantifiable, you have numbers attached to spatial planning. For instance, you have 4 regulatory barriers, and you get don't ask me why, but traditionally the OECD has been doing this work always out of 6. So if you have 6, you have a lot of regulatory barriers. If you have 0, you have no regulatory barriers. So if you identify 4 barriers and you have one of them has 6 and the other one has 0, then you prioritize the 6, okay? And then you can try and change it, and if the 6 is very much affected by some of the things at national level, that is an additional point that you can make to push for change, let's say. So yes, sorry, long answer, but the response is yes.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Hello. Thank you to the panelists for your inputs. I have a question to Albert, to Katarzyna, and to Lisa. I'm curious how, in developing these technologies and making them available to the market, what did you also do to stimulate demand for them and ensure that once they were ready, they would be taken up and perpetuated further?
Should I start? Okay. Yeah, that's the key question, how to scale up. We, and this was very much in, and is also still happening, yeah, we use pilots. So to do a pilot, for us, as I explained, industries, mid-sized industries are important. So the key to scale up your technology and get demand is to show a working installation in an industrial environment. And for us, that's in Rotterdam area, Rijnmond area, at the chemical plant, where we are validating the carbon capture technology. So really to show it. And this is also where the JTF, I think, has an important role to play to bridge that gap. Because the real issue is, I think, how to get companies and also mid-sized companies to to put money in a pilot with a startup or a scale-up. That is really really very difficult. As I explained, they have lots of issues on their mind, and that is the real challenge. And I think this is where JTF has a huge role to play.
Well, I could do the same answer. In the startup world, we have this notion called the death valley of startups, and that is exactly that. We need money to spend on a pilot, which the main goal is to showcase an industrial demonstration, but not to make revenue. So we need to spend a lot of money not to bring anything into our pocket. So that is really risky. That's why we need public funding support like the JTF. And specifically to the battery sector, because the question was also on the market, thankfully the regulation is also on our side. Battery regulation came into force in 2023, which mandates recycling and mandates also integration of recycled metals into European-made batteries. So that's also attraction for our sector and for the metals that we're producing.
I didn't mention before that we've got also on board in the cluster University of Technology and also research institutes, Fraunhofer Research Institutes. And one of the projects financed from the JTF funding called Validation of Applied Hydrogen is based of the idea to purchase the equipment for the hydrogen technology relating to, of course, production, but the storage and building refueling stations. So, as my colleague previously mentioned, JTF found is a perfect way, a perfect tool for the validation of the technology, for building capacity, and also to initiate the piloting projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I add? Yes, of course.
So actually, the project that is done in Slovenia basically is answering on these three the requests pilots. So the center in Kisovec actually is aimed to help industry with pilots. So to check CAM, for example, to help you with the CO2 capturing and then conversion back, and also with the hydrogen economy. And okay, that's one center, small center, which is placed in Slovenia, but Europe needs more such centers to be capable to really accelerate this transition.
May I add?
Rumiana.
Yes, this is why, as I said, such a test before invest environment is very, very necessary for SMEs, for mid-cap companies, because never mind who is developed the technology, but somebody shall test it pilotly before to invest some money. Never mind it will be the JTF or other public funding or private funding, but before to test how it works. And if there is some places for improvement, it will be really difficult to attract investors and to convince somebody to buy this technology. But when it's verified, it's tested in not only laboratory environment, then it will be much more easier for both sides.
Can I just...
Of course.
Sorry. I just wanted to... I mean, what I would like to say is just that, in a sense, we've been talking about infrastructures here, right? All sorts of different infrastructures. And what I think I'm trying to get across is this idea that regulatory infrastructure, regulation is infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an infrastructure that lies underneath all of that, and that it is enabling or not enabling certain circumstances, some businesses to develop or not develop. It's one component of that. And I think that's, in the energy markets, that's very clear. And the infrastructure for energy markets and for some of the things that we've talked about today are also very much at a much subnational level. And maybe I should go back to the answer that I was giving to Sophia. In a sense, I mean, I think what the added value, so I think the tool can be used on its own, but we're happy, of course, I should have mentioned that, to help whenever that whenever it's possible. I mean, we, of course, can help also be agents for change by persuading the change that needs to come across, by making the analysis and sort of putting the OECD name behind that as well. So regulation as an infrastructure for energy is critical to understand.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Further... you want to add?
And also talking about regulation as infrastructure, regulation of European funding is also very important, because sometimes it's very heavy and very bureaucratic as procedures, especially for SMEs to bring all of these papers as documents in the times when we are talking about digitalization. And all of this information could be easily accessed via some shared platform. And for us in the Digital Hub, it's really time-consuming to support SMEs to collect all of the documents that are needed and requested by the managing authority in Bulgaria, and at the same time to convince them that it's worth to make all of these efforts. Yes, talking about regulation, let's be more simplified, always promised and never happened, sorry. But I think I'll be supported.
Digitalization, e-cohesion at the heart of the issue. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Hanne Vandenberg from the European Environment Agency. I actually wanted to ask a question to all of the panelists, if you would be able to share your reflections on some of the implications of clean tech on the labor market and on skills, and if you're willing to share from your experience some good examples, some best practices, what works, what doesn't work, whether there are any bottlenecks that you've encountered when it comes to creating good quality jobs, reskilling, upskilling initiatives. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry if I'm boring, but if I'm, please tell me. So we're also supporting the trade unions in Bulgaria in mapping the skills of people from the mining industry, help support them to have their perspective for new job positions, for new skills to be obtained during this process. And what I understood was, once again, and it's very strong signal in my opinion to all of the stakeholders and decision makers, these people, never mind how well qualified and technically skilled are, they need some motivation, some psychological support to change their perspective, to understand that this change is not for make them more or less competitive, but to be more supported. And after that, to start in parallel some new skills training or professional vocational training, because for many of them, they're working in this industry for decades, for generations, and suddenly they shall be requalified or to start new position in some new, never mind the area is the same energy, but the technologies are totally different. The skills and knowledge they need, it will be provided by the JTF training program or programs or something like that. But for them, it's a huge stress. You could imagine if you should did this one. And this is why I will appeal once again. The JTF funding shall continue in the next period, because for them, for the companies, it's not so easy to adopt new technologies, new skills, new workers, but also to have this horizon to develop them in very supportive manner and environment.
Maybe if I add in batteries, especially in batteries, we know in Europe is very difficult situation. And in Batteries Europe, Batteries 2030 Plus, BEPA, we did a lot of exercises, what we need to do, and we can say in academic level, education is well done. So we are good. When it comes to the blue coat workers, we are very weak. And when it comes to vocational and then this primary, so in actually in school education, this is also very weak. So we need to do a little bit more there. So, and now how can actually we educate blue coat workers? So if we don't have facilities where they can be educated. And I will come now back to the center in the Saudi region. So we design it in the way that the process, the pilot process of production batteries is not fully automated. It's actually in sequences. So the workers that will get there, or the people that will be educated there, can actually assess step by step, can learn what is important in each step, what they need to take care, and so on. And the same is also when it comes to the other part of the center dealing with hydrogen and CO2 economy. And at the same time, yes, we are addressing also schools. We know that we need to start early, that with the kids to understand how battery is working, what is hydrogen, how hydrogen can be used, and so on.
In Saxony, the JTF supports vocational education and also university open master study dedicated to the clean technologies. But I would like to underline that if we need special workforce, we need a time for that. So the JTF should have also more time to prepare workforce for that. So it should be long-term strategy. Thank you.
Is it working? No. Well, thanks. Maybe to add on what has just been said on the battery sector, what we see from our recycling point of view is that most of the initiative that exists, because they exist, they are few, but they exist on training on battery jobs. They focus mainly on battery manufacturing, while we need to address the entire value chain. That includes recycling, but not only. There are also other jobs that are related to battery sector. Even non-technical jobs, the battery sector is very much unknown from anyone, from insurance to administration to even what the value chain looks like at a macro scale. So even those topics must be addressed and everybody should be informed on. Something we are implementing at MakeAware is what we call the MakeAware Academy. So we have developed our own internal training program. The idea is to first onboard everyone, because about 90% of the people that come into the company do not have a background in battery, because simply that does not exist in Europe. So we make sure that everybody's aligned, everybody speaks the same language. But now we need to take it further to make sure that we do on-the-job training as well, that is adapted to what we do, because it is very specific. But again, battery sector is niche, battery recycling is even more niche. And we're currently seeking funding for this. So if anyone has any good idea on what we could address, I'm open to hear about it.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight two things that we see with STS separation. We need mechanical engineers, project engineers, process engineers, both at vocational and academic level. And we see, which is also part of the JTF program we run, that the traditional oil and gas industries, that more people from those industries are interested to move into environmental and clean tech technology. That's maybe my first observation. Second observation is that on a vocational level, and that sounds very familiar from the others, that certain skills are really becoming very rare. So we, for example, our units involve stainless steel a lot, and you need mechanical engineering skills that are very specific. And in some fields, there's only 1 or 2 people left in the entire region who still know how to teach these skills to new vocational students. So that's actually for us quite scary, and we wonder how to how to do that in the future when we are building more units.
One last question.
Once again, a question for all the panelists. What do you think is something that most people don't know about what you do or your industry that you think we should know, or that you think people in general should know about what you do?
Thank you for that provocative question. Interesting one. Okay, maybe I'll tell you. You've probably heard about the Iberian blackout, right, of energy on the 28th of April, right? I was at the airport, ready to go back to Paris, waiting to board, and suddenly there's no energy anywhere. And it was literally a blackout everywhere. And you didn't have telephones. After about 2 hours, all the batteries were down. There was you couldn't communicate with anyone. There was no Ubers because everything needed Google. There was nothing. I mean, you couldn't get a cab because queues were huge. So I walked home with my 8-year-old son and a whole load of bags for 8 kilometers. And you get home and there's no lift. And the door is electrical, so you can't open the door. So I had to stay outside. I should have had the key because that was an option, but I had the code, so I usually use the code, didn't take the key. And now we know that basically that came down. Was a number of different reasons for why that happened. But one of the things that is maybe not so commonly known is that basically, and by the way, for those who are familiar with blackouts, I was very familiar with them when I was a kid, right? There was loads of them when I was a kid. And at some point the system adapted, and then the system works. There's a lot of redundancies and everything works very well. Now what happened here was that we are moving towards renewables. And renewables have different characteristics than the thermal generation plants. We know that actually moving to a system around with all the different needs for renewables is actually much cheaper. But in this particular case, the reason why this happened was because of something called inertia services. I don't know if you've heard about inertia, but thermal generation plants, what they do, and that's why they're not so efficient, is they turn turbines. So turbines turn, and then when the turbine, something goes wrong with the system, the turbines slowly unwind. And that allows time for the energy system to adjust to any voltage problems, right? Because now we have renewables and they are direct injection of electricity from the sun or from the wind, then that means basically you don't have as many inertia services as you used to do. And so you don't pay for those inertia services because they were a byproduct before. And that's the kind of thing that you need to understand, that when you change the characteristics in a system, complex system like the energy system, you need to look at the different components and need to realize that there's very significant different needs, and that might require significant changes to regulation. In inertia, for instance, because it was a byproduct, it wasn't being remunerated. So clearly one of the things that needs to be considered is, okay, you don't have turbines anymore, you need to be able to remunerate these services. So you need to add that to the list of ancillary services that can be remunerated for, so that providers can either set these things up separately and provide that sort of service to the grid. And I think that cascades throughout the system. So I think that's probably something that's worthwhile understanding. Energy systems are complex. When you change the technology paradigm, you need to adapt all the different components, the regulatory ones as well. The good news is, as I said, that actually we have empirical evidence that shows that changing the system with all its different components is significantly cheaper to run than the current conventional system as it stands, because of all the efficiencies, the much more efficient use of the system. So I don't know if you knew that or not. I don't know if that's common knowledge. I don't usually think that it is. I wish I'd known that on the 28th of April when I was trying to explain to my son what was going on. And I could have started by explaining, it's about inertia, boy. Don't you know?
Very hard to match this one, Ruben. Did I miss a meeting before? Something? Anyway, I just want to, on the same note of we need a lot of different technologies for energy. The same applies for carbon capture. And I want to give you a little mental tool because carbon capture is very puzzling. We hear about it all the time, direct air capture, we hear point source carbon capture, and you may start to wonder what is all this innovation needed to tackle this problem. And I will give you a very simple analogy which helped me a lot to understand the problem, is that basically picture the atmosphere as a bathtub, a huge bathtub, and imagine that the water in the bathtub is the CO2. Then there's the tap, and the water is gushing from the tap. That is basically all the CO2 emissions that are currently still being emitted, and they still will be emitted in the coming decades, because we cannot simply close all these industries and electrify them or chase them away. This is the tap, and what companies like ours are doing is basically slowly closing the tap with the water coming out and making it less. But then there's also other technologies like direct air capture, which are also needed, and they deal basically with the drain on the tap. They are trying to make small drains on the bottom of the bathtub, and this will become especially important in the coming 20, 30 years, hopefully sooner, when all these industrial emissions are finally, let's say, stabilized. They will not completely disappear, but then the level of the bathtub will stop increasing. But then the key will be to reduce the CO2 in the atmosphere, and then technologies like direct air capture, which take CO2 out of the air around us, will become more and more important. And basically, in the bathtub, making small opening drains in the bottom of the bathtub to make sure that we can stabilize and make sure the bathtub won't overflow. I hope it didn't confuse anyone.
Could it be possible to have I would like to put my slide back. What I would like to talk to you about is circular value chain. And I want to keep it macro and not to go too much into the details. Where is it? There it is. As you can see, there are 4 main activities when we're talking battery value chains. First one is the most common one, is the gigafactory. So you produce battery. Then you use them. So it's the OEM phase. Then you recycle them, hopefully. That's what we common. But then you have a 4th activity, which is called cathode active material manufacture, or CAM manufacturing. And that is currently missing in Europe. It simply does not exist. We do not have the skills. The only few projects that we have are joint venture with Chinese or Korean companies. And we're still highly dependent on knowledge and skills that are coming from Asia on that sector. And if we do not have CAM making in Europe, we won't be able to close the European loop on metals. So this is very crucial. And that is even more true when you know, if you don't know already, that battery does not mean anything actually in terms of composition. You can have batteries that are composed with nickel, cobalt, lithium, others with iron and phosphate, the so-called LFP batteries. So every time you address battery chemistry, you have a different value chain with different actors. And I think you as regions and as EU representatives need to be aware of the complexity of the battery value chain to better understand it and to better address it and make sure that it is fully deployed here in Europe?
With each new technology, we need education. We need also raising awareness, and we need acceptance for that. Thank you.
Okay. It's hard to add something, but I will start 20 years ago when I finished my PhD, and the boss at that time said, "Robert, what you are going to do in your life?" And I dedicated my professional life to batteries, to development of batteries. And I can say batteries are still not done, so there is still space for improvements. They can be cheaper, but as it was mentioned, we need to actually master the value chain. And batteries are not only OEM, batteries are energy storage, batteries are robotics, batteries are medicine, batteries are Internet of Things. There are huge space for batteries. But at the end, batteries cannot do everything. So today we have a 2 terawatt-hour production, and humanity needs approximately 80 terawatt-hours if we want to really live with renewables. So then I will give to hydrogen. Next speaker.
When I completed my PhD, it was focused on sustainable development and the roles of the local authorities in that process. I could conclude, and connecting all the dots, that it's very important all of the technologies and the solutions to be delivered in time manner. I mean, if you have some very well developed technologies as renewable, but the grid is not so smart, then Ruben and his son will have some difficulties. And if we're planning well and supporting, and we have synergy and well coordinated activities between JTF mechanism, other supporting tools, not only funding, but also policy development and applying, then we could be more successful and to be on the same line with the Chinese and Korean technologies in recycling and whatever. So batteries and technologies are not all, and money are not all that we need. We need to be more precise in planning and delivering solutions.
Thank you. So let me come to the last round of questions, and this time it's me to ask a question. I mean, you all benefited from the JTF support, and you are using this fund actively. You benefited in terms of your companies. So, in a nutshell, what are your lessons out of it? Because you are the direct beneficiaries of it. And what would you do differently? If you could, not yourself, but what could the funding do differently to help you further to continue your journey?
I'm probably the only one that hasn't benefited from such funding.
Well, indirectly at least.
But eventually, hopefully, I think it would be interesting to do so, to implement the tool. But don't have that experience.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is clearly what is demonstrated here, and this is why Ruben has had the keynote, because money is not everything. And if the regulatory environment is not right, you can't implement. And this is something which is very important in this current situation, where we're so much behind in implementation. Albert.
Yeah, what we learned is in validating technology with the pilot partners is that actually there was, in our case, heat recovery was also very important, and that's feedback we used to integrate that into our carbon capture installation, which we're actually doing now, which is making the operating cost of carbon capture lower. So this was very helpful, maybe very specific but technical aspect that we learned. And in my view, what new ways can JTF think of to improve? I think, following on what I said before, had to reduce the financial risk of pilot partners. And this is really key for pilot partners, mid-sized industries to work with startups and scale-ups. Perhaps I think the JTF already aims to reduce their risk, but maybe like a financial voucher for them to, which helps them to to invest in a pilot, reduces even further the risk. That would be very, I think, even further improvement of the JTF and also fit the program very well.
Well, I have the same ask in terms of improvement. I think flexibility when it comes to funding and alignment with the industrial timeline is key. We don't always know from at the very beginning the exact budget we will need. We need to do studies before estimating the capex of what we're going to spend on. So having the funding mechanism that is aligned with the industrial norms is key. And I think it can be taken further. What we have learned at MakeAware with the Just Transition Fund is really to work with the local administration. Something I'd like to showcase, because I think it's a very, very great example of what can be done. We are deploying our solution in a city called Béthune in northern France. And there, what they have established is something that they call the CLAP. So it's a French acronym for Local Committee for Facilitation of Administrative Authorization, so permitting, as you mentioned a lot. And permitting is often, if not always, on the critical path of industrial projects. And what they do is simple. They bring everyone in the room, so the health agency, the fire department, which is key for us because we're working with batteries, and other involved parties. And we can ask questions because as an industrial, especially an SME where you only have one person that is fully working on that topic, having everyone in the room and knowing who to ask questions is not always easy. They can ask questions to us as well. We can explain our project. We can align on timelines. And that makes the entire process smoother. It's not mandatory for them to do that. It's just a showcase of what good practice can bring and industrial knowledge, because the northern France region is a region that was well known for its automotive industry. Now it's shifting towards EV, so electric vehicle industry and the battery sector in general. And that's, again, something very, very useful as a small company like us.
So we need the simplification, and Rumiana already mentioned about it. And we need a long-distance strategy, not a cut in the middle of the action. And as Albert mentioned about sharing the risk. In Saxony, JTF also support startups, giving them a kind of business angel bonus. So it's very important to have this opportunity and to continue it. Thank you.
If I ever start once again such project, I hope I will start it in the environment, which is more flexible, as my colleagues already said. So it's something that it's really not predictable, and environment is moving so fast, especially in the area that we are covering today, that if you plan something in 3 years in advance, price and also functionality of some devices are completely different, and if you stone that into the project at the beginning and then you need to change, that's like a huge burden even for academics. We are used to be really focused on the project. So, and of course, with that, I would like to have also more time for implementation. We are with the implementation phase exactly for our project. We are now counting really weeks if we are managed to do it or not.
If I could conclude again, more well-coordinated and flexible regulation framework between the levels and less bureaucracy.
Thank you. So we heard the last words, and let me conclude. I took a lot of I noted down a lot of points here. So what we learned here is basically that transition is about systemic changes. And we heard this interesting story about walking from the airport. But it is true, and it is managing the complexity of it. And transition means at the end that the European economy becomes more resilient, more sustainable, more competitive, and more sovereign. We heard this from the panelists and the speakers. We heard this from the angle of regulation, which is so important, the foundation of a good functioning of capacities of doing things in time. An enabler. We heard about what SMEs, startups face, and here, true, there's the valley of death and the valley, I don't know, of scale up, and when you come to it, meaning there need to be financing and risk reduction. So we may want to think about also adding other instruments than just grants to our portfolio. And part of that is, and this is also reflected by what agencies have to do on the ground, which the Commission can't do because we are here in Brussels. It's creating a conducive environment on the ground. And we heard this example of just getting all the actors together and giving information to stressed out startups. So in this sense, I think these are good points to remember also for you to bring forward to your homes, because what is important now is that we implement the JTF. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang. Thank you. And thank you so much to all our amazing guests. I just want to ask, has your son forgiven you yet for walking 8 kilometres, getting home and not having the front door key?
It was such a bonding experiment.
Oh my goodness, I bet he's going to go into, definitely into energy, yes, some of those fields. Or not, or not, yes, indeed. Key manufacturing, maybe. I'm not going to echo everything that we've heard on this final panel, because I think actually so many of the big points you have really reiterated so well. We've been talking about structural reform, the need to have those channels of communication, the need to consult, the time needed, and actually the skills pipeline that we've been talking about in this last panel as well, and how we've had that echoed in other conversations today about how everyone needs to be involved. I'd just like to leave you for a final thought, actually, with just our champions from this morning, those roadmap projects that have basically, I think, taken so many of the different ideas we've heard for the rest of the morning and the afternoon and have really taken it forward. And the importance of having a good badge as well, obviously. Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for you to network now. We have wonderful drinks and also music from the Aneta Nayan trio ready for you in the castle. And I have to say, it's not often that you get to say there are drinks in the castle for you all. So let us enjoy that. Tomorrow morning, we're going to start at 9:30. Really important session, actually, about how to monitor progress, how to track your changes, how to get the right data so you can keep projects on track. That's the start of a really interesting day tomorrow at 9:30. If you are looking to get back to the centre of Brussels, I mean, how you could leave this, I don't know. But if you are, then the shuttle buses will be running from now until 6 o'clock. 2 different buses taking back to Stal and Calvoet as well. But it just leaves me to say thank you so much for your time today, for being here. Thank you for those who have been joining us online. Your presence has been really appreciated. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank again all our lovely speakers today, our interpreters and everyone that has brought this event together. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Thank you.